So BIOS, CMOS, and UEFI or UEFI, what's the difference exactly? Now we've already gone through the difference between BIOS and CMOS, and I just wanted to quickly reiterate this. So the BIOS is the firmware, right? So BIOS equals firmware. That's the firmware that's on your motherboard, and it's solid. It's non-volatile. We've got the CMOS. The CMOS is all of the settings. So perhaps your fan speed, the boot sequence, things like that's going on in your from your BIOS. So BIOS is the firmware. CMOS is sort of storing the settings. And remember, CMOS is a technology to store information, volatile. So the settings storage. And what then is this UEFI or UEFI business? Well, this is what a BIOS used to look like. And you can see at the bottom here, you can only really use a laptop there. Sorry, you could only really use a keyboard. Now, in a UEFI version, it's effectively just an updated version of this. It looks prettier. So this is the BIOS. This is a BIOS. Now a UEFI thing would be more graphical. You'd have probably you'd have a picture of a fan here, and it would be spinning, and then you'd have a temperature gauge over here, and that would look like there was mercury in it there, and it would tell you that that's at the CPU's at 90 degrees and the GPU's at da, and it will give you all of this information as well here, which is just telling you the standard stuff. And it will also allow you to go around with this is a really bad picture of a mouse. So I'll be able to move this mouse around as well. Whereas on this one, which is the BIOS, I can't move the mouse around, which sounds like a small thing, but effectively we've got an updated GUI, graphical user interface. It looks prettier. Effectively, it's somewhat simpler to use, and there's a lot more configuration on it. So it's got things like your fan controller will also control the lights, and you can change the lights to this thing I was saying about when the CPU gets too hot, which that's quite hot for a CPU. When the CPU gets too hot, you change the lights to red. So when you think about the differences between UEFI, there's not too much. I suppose one of the main differences is that it supports a larger disk partitions. Let's say I had a 10 terabyte hard drive, which is a tremendously huge hard drive, or even a 4 terabyte. Actually, let's do a 4 terabyte. It's more reasonable. 4 terabytes is an incredible amount anyway, but the UEFI supports partitions of larger than 2 terabytes, I think it is. So it supports one. So you've got one hard drive that is 4 terabytes. Obviously, I don't break it in half. A partition isn't where it's just where I've logically broken it in half. It's just saying, well, allocate 2 terabytes here and 2 terabytes here, and we'll call this the operating system 1, and we'll call this I like to play games 1. So we can say that. And this is the thing, right? We can add more partition. There's more functionality. It's just a bit of a newer version. It also, and we'll get into this a bit more in depth on the rootkit side of things, but the security aspect of it, it's now with safe boot. UEFI now has safe boot, which does help some things. It helps a small fraction a part of rootkits, which is a nasty virus that can get down onto the firmware levels of things. But we'll stop there for time being, and I hope that cleared up the difference between CMOS, BIOS, and UEFI.